Okay, so we got that done. And now I can go back to share. Mhm. Come on. Okay, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait another minute or so to and I'm gonna go ahead and right now to hit the mute all button, and which doesn't mean anything other than it cuts down the background noise for everybody getting on. But all right, good. Okay, here. That's Okay, I'm back in the saddle. Let's see. Have I got? Yeah, I'm back in the saddle again. Pat's little pit bull decided that she wanted to come in and give me some kisses, and so I scratched her back, and then she went back in there. So all is well. That's the one that got snake bit this week, or last week, like Thursday. We came back home from setting up for services on Saturday, and she had been snake bit on her rear right paw, and so that was that was kind of expensive as it turned out. So, all right, so here we are. We're ready to go. We got 13 people in here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And there's more people that promise that they're gonna jump online tonight, or try to anyway. And one of them being Martha Martha Williams. Pat talked to her for a good long time today, and so she said she was going to try to try to make it onto the class tonight. So that'd be good. So let's begin with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in words of Torah. All right. So tonight I had grand plans to send out a deal for chapter 5 and 6, and then the more I got into it, I said, "Well, I can get 5 in easily," but then I'd only get into a little bit on chapter 6, and so I wanted to hit chapter 6 by itself because that finishes out the it would finish out the um, um, visions that Zechariah had, and I wanted to finish that out with just in one class instead of that final vision instead of trying to just piecemeal it. So anyway, we'll just do chapter 6 next week. That's not a big deal. But I did put together this little chart for you here. You can see it. Boop. There you go. Um, a chart that recaps all of the visions and then what their meaning is, what the theme of it is, and then also the reference, what part of Zechariah it would entail. And so that kind of would put things together. I like charts and stuff like that so that I can kind of look at them. Otherwise, I can't remember uh, much about any of that stuff. I could remember the golden lampstand is Zechariah 4, but beyond that, it gets kind of wonky for me. So anyway, I thought maybe you would enjoy that, and you can take that one slide, I think, and print it off if you wanted to, so that you could remember it if you wanted to do something like that. So before we begin, are there any questions from anyone? Now, there was a question last week where my good friend Joseph said, asked me, said, well, how come that, in the Bible, that Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel, those guys, would not let the surrounding people help them build the temple and so forth. And my answer was because they, as it was off the top of my head, was that, well, those guys were not, they were not what the Jews considered one of them. Because the Jewish people, the ones that had been in exile, had come back, and they'd had 70 years of God's discipline and just a reset button. Whereas the people that were there in the land, well, those were people that were left over from the Assyrian invasion 170 years earlier, and they had been highly assimilated with non-Jewish people, and that was by design from the Assyrian government. And so that's where we got the Samaritans, the ones that had decided, well, we're going to worship God in our own way on our own mountain and Mount Gerizim, and the Jewish people considered them to be half breeds at best, and not even Jewish at worst. They were in their mind they were pagans, and so they didn't. They just felt like that it would be best if the temple was rebuilt by the people that came back from Babylon, and because they knew their pedigree, but the ones up in the surrounding community and up in Samaria, they didn't know their pedigree and their ancestry and so forth. So they didn't want them. So their fears or their suspicions were borne out in the next chapter of Ezra, where um, they had started to they sent letters to Artaxerxes with all sorts of lies and things, telling him to that the Ezra, Nehemiah, and company were, and Zerubbabel, they were against. They were teaching against, or trying to foment revolt or something against the Babylonians and so on and so forth. And so they requested that the building of the temple be stopped, because they looked at the temple as the symbol of Judaism, and if they were able to rebuild this temple, then the Jewish people would just keep growing and growing. And so that's exactly what had happened then, until Darius came along and said, "No, no, no, you can rebuild your temple." And at that time, so Ezra and Nehemiah were right to be suspicious of these guys as, "Oh, we'll help." but they would have sabotaged it certainly. And so they had to wait 16 years to restart building the temple, and that's when Haggai came in and got everybody going again. So that was that was the answer to the question. If For Joseph, and I hope that answered what you had asked.
Yes, it does, and thank you, Rabbi. That was such a such a cool weave of information from um, the people who returned, the two tribes of Judah returning back to that Jerusalem part, and you had these old guys who were, like you said, immersed in the 10 tribes to the north, and Samaritans and Samaria, where they're basically says, okay, you can't help us with the building here, and they ended up building their own temple and trying to worship up there. But then when the Lord comes, the first place he goes to reveal himself was to the well that Jacob dug up there in
Samaria, yeah.
Samaria, and says, "Hey guys, I'm here now. I'm going to bring you back together." So I really appreciate that part of the story because I didn't realize that until you were telling the story last week, and I said, "Wow, that is so cool." So thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, well, and where he did it is that area now, Jacob's altar and Jacob's well there is right there between the two mountains, Gerizim and Ebal, which you remember the Jews when they came into the land to conquer it, God told them to get on one mountain and then on the other, and half of the tribes would sing out the blessings for obeying God, and the other side would sing out the curses for disobeying God. So that area now is called Nablus now, in modern day world, but that altar is still there, and the well, I think they purport that it's still there, but it's interesting that Yeshua then came in. The first person that he actually said, "Yeah, I am the Messiah," it was to a woman. Not only that, it was to a Samaritan woman. So he was all about breaking down barriers, and so it all of that uh, did it just kind of very interesting how that played out. So anyway, Rudy, you had a comment?
Quick question, and tell me if I'm wrong. So he told her that he was the Messiah, and everybody else he never really told. He just said, "Who do you think I am?" But he never told anybody else, and the disciples acknowledged him as the Messiah. Is that true?
Well, that's pretty much true that the clearest indication or clearest statement that he had about um, being the Messiah was to this Samaritan woman when says, "If you drink from me, you'll never thirst again," and um, so he was hinting at that, but it was a pretty clear statement that he had told her, and I'd have to go back and research it even more to get the exact wording on it. But yeah, he pretty much told her that, yeah, I am the Messiah. I'm the one that people have been looking for. And so that's when she went back to Samaria into the town there and told everybody, "Come see the guy that told me everything that I've ever done." And so, yeah, that in her mind, anybody that could look into her past and tell exactly what she was and how she was had to be the Messiah. So, all right, good enough. Um, okay, thought I saw Carmen jump on there, but she jumped right back off again. So, okay, let's go ahead with then the verses. And yeah, while I was putting this stuff together this week, I didn't realize it, but I had put all of these verses and everything and got everything ready to go and I was using a translation that I don't normally use, and I don't normally I say approve of, but it's just one that I don't ever use. It's an English translation that attempts to throw in Hebrew names, and they use the Tetragrammaton name, the Yod He Vav He, and try to make a pronunciation of it and that sort of stuff. So I didn't, it didn't dawn on me because I wasn't using that name, and then all of a sudden I looked there and something popped up, and I says, "Oh my goodness!" And I looked at my software, and I had inadvertently on the tabs, they're right together, and I had punched the wrong one, and they're similar enough that I didn't catch it. So then I had to go back and redo all of my scripture references. So hopefully I got it all right, and we're on the Tree of Life version here. So Zechariah 5:1. Once again I lifted up my eyes, and behold, I saw a flying scroll. And another thing I've had to deal with all week long is I made a joke about that he saw a flying scroll and not a flying squirrel. And so now, my mouth plays tricks on me, and I have to be very careful to say flying scroll and not flying squirrel. So anyway, this is the sixth out of the eight successive visions that Zechariah experienced, all in one night. I mean, he got all of these visions in one night. And what's incredible is that he had all these visions, and he was able to remember them and write them down. And so, I don't know about you, but it's very, very seldom that I have a dream at night that when I wake up in the morning, I remember it. And there's been a few times just recently that where, and I'll tell you, it was the Lord speaking to me very succinctly in a some advice or more of an advice or confirmation uh, to a friend. And so I remember that dream very, very vividly. But generally speaking, my dreams are pretty innocuous and something that I can't even remember. So
But
anyway.
is a vision the same thing as a dream?
No, ma'am. A vision is where you are wide awake, and
Yeah.
Peter had the vision of the sheet coming down and so forth. No, mine was absolutely, it was a dream hooked up to my CPAP and just chattering away on my CPAP. So, but no, never had a vision per se, but dreams, had a few dreams. But he could remember all of these things, and um, but he had these visions at night, and so um, that's the difference, I guess, because he was awake, and it was at night. That they said all of the visions were at night. I just had always assumed that they were dreams, but and in one case, he said, and the angel shook him, awoke him as a man would wake up from a dream, and so I think he was possibly just in and out of that experience, whether it was a full-fledged vision that he was awake or a dream or whatever. But he was able to remember all eight of them and then write them all down. So I thought that was kind of incredible. But his vision was of a scroll that was flying in the wind, kind of a thing, and the word for scroll that's used there is actually roll, but the Hebrew word is Megillah, and it's spelled kind of like Magilla the gorilla from the cartoon days, but Megillah, and it's what we use to describe the scrolls that we use for like in Purim, the scroll of Esther, or if we had a scroll Isaiah. Then that's also called a Megillah. And so the unusual aspect about this particular scroll was that it was flying, and so there's that's my AI generated interpretation of the scroll that was he saw flying. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but it maybe what he was looking at was what we would consider, if you've ever seen one of these banners or advertisements that they tow behind an airplane. And um, so I didn't want to tell the AI generated thing to, make it look like it was towed behind an airplane, because, then at that point there would be an airplane in my picture towing a Torah scroll. So anyway, and then you may ask, well, what is the Hebrew here? Well, the on one side is the uh, blessings of obedience. What of well, it was basically no, it's the curses for the liar, and the curses for the thief. And so that's comes right out of our study tonight of chapter 5. So anyway, that's my picture there. And so then the angel asked me, "What do you see?" And I replied, "I see a flying scroll 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide." Now, um, even without being prompted or out in any introduction or anything, the he Zechariah looks up, he sees this flying scroll, and the angel immediately says, "Well, what do you see?" And he says, "I see a flying scroll, 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide." So he repeated, what he had said in verse 1, but then this time he added a little bit more information, that he says, "Well, this scroll is 30 feet long and 15 feet high." Now, um, that's as far as a scroll being 30 feet long, that is not unusual. If you were to take our Torah scroll from the synagogue, it is every bit of 30 feet long, because we normally get at Simchat Torah, and we roll the scroll back. Well, we put 3 tables out there. Each one of those tables is 6 feet long, so for a total of 18 feet. And we roll that thing about 4 or 5 times back, so it's much longer than 30 feet. But what we normally find of these Torah scroll, or any kind of a scroll back from those days, and even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, those scrolls that we've uncovered there, they could be 30 feet long, and many of them were. But the tallest one was only 11 inches tall. Now our Torah scroll at the synagogue is about 26 inches, I believe it is, the parchment part of it. That's not unusual for today's Torah scrolls, but back in those days, they a normal Torah scroll, or any kind of a scroll, would only be about a foot high, but it could be 30 feet long. Okay, so but what's interesting here is that he puts these exact dimensions there, and the exact dimensions were like 15 feet, 10 cubits by 20 cubits. And so what does that equate to? Well, it equates to it was the size of uh, it was the size of the holy place. Yeah, 20 cubits by 10 cubits. It was the size of the holy place in the tabernacle, which was 30 by 15. Okay. And then when you add on the Holy of Holies, that added the other 15 feet on there, but it was 30 feet by 15 feet. And any of you that have been out to our house and you see how I've got that mock-up of the area of the tabernacle, you can kind of get an idea of how some people says, "Wow, I didn't know it was that big." Other people says, "Wow, I didn't know it was that small." And so it just guess whether you're a half glass full or half glass empty kind of guy. So, but anyway, they also said that that was the size of the porch on the front porch area of Solomon's temple. So we don't know, and if there is any significance to the idea of being 20 cubits by 10 cubits, we really uh, we don't know. It doesn't manifest itself throughout the rest of the vision or even through the rest of the book. So anyway, verse 3 said, "He said to me, this is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole land. Everyone who steals will be swept away from here according to it, and everyone who swears will be swept away from here according to it." And so what we have here is um, the angel. He's explained that the scroll represents the curses that God had decreed against the Israelites who stole or swore falsely in the Lord's name. Now, according to what God had previously written in the law, those who stole and profaned his name would die, and thus, getting rid of the sin in the land. Now, here, the word haaretz can mean either the earth, all the earth, or most of the time it's talking about the land, the promised land, land of Israel. And so that's what they're talking about here is the land of Israel. Now, the writing on both sides of the scroll could be. And remember that the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments were also written on both sides. The 10 words, the Decalogue, as it's called, were written on both sides, and so it's kind of funny. There was these two commandments kind of formed the halfway mark, halfway point of the Ten Commandments, and so that what that what that kind of is a picture of is that, okay, when they said that a person that lies, I think that was verse 5, and then a person that steals as verse 6, or maybe it's the other way around. But anyway, that's significant here in this scroll. And I wanted to hit here the idea of what the curses meant. What kind of curses are we talking about here? And let's
Rabbi,
see.
while you're searching, and getting a drink, can I insert a question for you?
Certainly.
So the question is this: you're getting ready to describe the curses. You may have told us this already, but give us another overview of the person giving the curse. Is it the Lord of hosts? And if it's the Lord of hosts, why is that different from all the other words that we've seen on describing this entity, this character? Who is the Lord of hosts? That's my question concerning the curses as well.
Okay. Well, now in this particular book and going um, into this idea of the curses. and who the angel is. Now there are people who said, "Oh no, this is a what they call a theophany or a pre-incarnate Yeshua, pre-incarnate Christ." And uh, I'm not really sure that that is the case here. And it's all often a little bit confusing in the Bible when it talks about the angel of the Lord is okay. Is that talking about, somebody like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, or whatever? Um, is it talking about actually, you know, you know, like the people that came with the visitors that came to see Abraham, says, and it was the Lord. So that was pretty clear that that was somehow or another it was associated with God Himself, a theophany, a pre-incarnate Messiah. But in this particular case, in Zechariah, it's a little unclear, and they do jump back and forth with some of their examples. But as far as the curses, uh, I'm not sure that it is significant in who is doing the or talking about the curses, because it's obvious that the curses come from God Himself, and so the angels that are doing as they're a malak, which is malak, which is a messenger. It's another word for angel or messenger, and is very closely tied, of course, to um, Mashiach or king. Actually, Malek and Malek is a messenger, and the other's a king, and so they're all kind of tied together with the root words. In this case, I'm not sure that it makes a whole lot of difference as to whether it was, actually uh, God, the Lord of hosts, Adonai Svaot, or if it was an angel. The result is the same. It was the curse is not diminished, whether it came from God Himself or through His messenger. It was still the same kind of curse. And so, does that answer your question at all?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so the three types of curses that have that they've identified, that one of them is a curse against an unknown person for a specified crime. Now, this is in Judges. There's a woman that she lost some money, and she just cursed, so put a curse on the person that took her money, and then to come to find out, it was her son that had taken her money, and she didn't know it. And so when uh, it came to, they had a come to Jesus meeting between the two of them. The son recognized that his error, and he apologized and got forgiveness, and or asked for forgiveness. And she, because it was her son, realized that, okay, I don't want a curse on my son, so she blessed him. So this first one, a curse against an unknown person for a known crime. Somebody steals your money, but you don't know who, and you say, "A pox on their heads for whoever stole my money." And but then when you find out, you can reverse it, or you can abrogate the curse by giving a blessing instead. So you can reverse that curse. Now, the second curse there would be against a known person. Okay, you know who the person is, but you just can't prove it. And you just know, I just know it. And so what they're talking about here, Numbers, is the case of the unfaithful wife, or whether the husband suspects his wife of being unfaithful, but he just can't prove it, because every time he looked at her iPad tablet, there was nothing there. So he had in the Bible, it says you can take her to the high priest, and that what and with the accusation, and she can say, no, I did not do that, and I was not unfaithful to my husband or whatever. And so they would take her and they would shave the hair off of her head, and then she had to drink a some water that had the ashes from the red heifer and hyssop and one other thing, but and if she drank it was a curse that okay, if you have been unfaithful to your husband and you're denying it, you have to drink this stuff. If it's true that you were unfaithful to them, then you're going to die a horrible death. And basically your insides and all your female parts are going to rot away, and you're just going to die. And if you were faithful, then nothing's going to happen. And so that's where that comes from. That kind of curse where you know who the person is, but you just can't prove it. Now that one there, the only way you can get out of that one is because it's a he said, she said kind of a thing, is through the testing of in some manner. And so then the third type of curse is one that it's brought on by a party that breaks an oath or a covenant, and we would see that in when Abraham and God made a covenant with Abraham. He cut a covenant with Abraham, and they cut the animals in half, laid them on the side, and then the both people were supposed to walk through the middle of them, and with the wording that okay, if I break this covenant, then may I be like these dead animals here. Well, God put Abraham to sleep, and he walked through the animals himself, and so that basically Abraham, no matter what he did, could never break that covenant. Now, fast forward a few hundred years to the Mount Sinai, where God again cut a covenant with the people, and they definitely then could break that curse. And so, had God specified the curses out there that would happen to them if they broke the covenant. And so that's where that particular deal came from. Okay, so these two curses, these two things that are specified here, lying and stealing. That's the halfway point in the Ten Commandments. And so what that would indicate is that there is it's a word called a synecdoche, and it's a Greek word. One of those it's Greek to me things. But when you say something like um, you use one word or two words, but it means the entirety of. Like when you would say, well, they in this case, you said, well, it was stealing and lying. Well, that meant the entire law. It would be like when we would say that. Oh, for instance, the White House says this. Well, the White House, it's a building. It can't say anything. But what it means is that the administration, the president or his spokesman have come up with this or that, statement or whatever. And so that's a word that you can use. Synecdoche, and it's Synecdoche. Use that one next time that you're playing Scrabble and just astound your friends. All right. So this curse that they're talking about here, huh? Go ahead.
May I ask a question?
Huh?
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If men, if suspect men not faithful, okay, so what's going to give men to drink?
Oh, okay. Back in those days, okay, it was a double standard. Okay, it was definitely a double standard because Um, the wife could not accuse her husband of being unfaithful and have him go and take the drink. Okay, it just didn't work that way. But if a husband suspected his wife, or if he just didn't like the way that she turned the pancakes in the morning, and he went in and told the high priest, well, she's being unfaithful to me, uh, and she'd have to drink that. Um, so yeah, there was nothing there against the husband. It was, yeah, that's one of the things that you look in the law and say, okay, that one didn't turn out all that well. So was that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no there was nothing there that she could come back. Now, if the husband accused his wife of being unfaithful and she drank the drink and nothing happened to her, um, well, can you imagine what that was going to be, what that was going to do to a marital relationship from there going on out? I would say that it's probably not going to be good for him. And but the law was also very specific that if she was found innocent, that he could take no retribution against her, and that he had to provide for her as if she was still his blushing bride of a newlywed. He had to take care of her and treat her as if she was, which she was, totally faithful, and he could not then treat her badly just because she made him look like a fool. But there again, the evidence of that ever happening is very, very slim. According to the sages, it almost never happened because people realize that, wow, if I'm wrong, um, that's not going to go well for me. And there were other ways too. I mean, you could, back in those days, you could get a divorce decree, and really for just any kind of reason. I mean, like flipping the pancakes the wrong way. You didn't like it, you could get they would call it a get, and you could go and basically a decree of divorcement. But then if you did that, then again, the law was very specific. You had to provide for that woman that you had married, and basically it was a community property kind of a thing. She got all of her dowry price back and then some. So um, was it perfect? No, but our divorce laws today are not perfect either. So, but that's a little history there for you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So, verse 4. I will send it out. It's a declaration of Adonai Svaot, and it will enter into the house of the thief and into the house of the one who swears falsely by my name, and will reside inside his house, destroying it, both its wood and its stones. Okay, here's kind of a description of the curse, what it's going to be. Remember that the previous visions that Zechariah had were focused mostly on the leadership. You had Zerubbabel, who was the governor, and then you had Joshua, who was the high priest, and then it talks also to the priests, and so those visions were admonishing them to do right and to follow God's laws. This particular vision now that he had is more focused on the individuals and the people as a whole, just the normal, everyday, common people. And so he's saying, okay, those of you that break the law, you lie and you cheat, or uh, as a that's a shortcut for saying you've broken the Ten Commandments. You've broken all the law. And remember what Yeshua said: if you break even one of these, the least of these, you've broken them all. And so here he's now speaking to the common people, the regular people of Israel, and saying, "Look, this curse is going to come on you individually and you as a people, and it'll come into your house and destroy everything about your house." And even to the point it says the wood and the stone. Well, that can be the wood and the stone. Either one of those, the wood could be their idols that they had, or the wood could be the wood that's holding up their roof and their house. And a lot of times that they would have put these wooden rafters, and then they would put stuff on top to make a roof. Well, it could be that, or it could be actually the stones of their house. So both the wood and the stones would be destroyed, meaning the structure of their home plus any kind of idols that they had. And so, going ahead, verse 5. Um, let's see, where did I end up? Okay. I'm still trying to find my notes here. Okay. Zechariah 5. Okay. Then the angel speaking with me came forward and said to me, now lift up your eyes and see what is appearing. And there's something that I feel like I'm missing here well, if it is, I'm just I had so many notes here tonight that um, I apologize for that. But part of this, the thing that I wanted to bring back, that's what it was in the part here where we're talking about that this curse was geared and focused on the people themselves. Is that the idea of lying and stealing and that sort of thing, uh, in many ways, has become just commonplace, even sadly, even within the body of Messiah in some of these churches. I was reading an article just this last week of a certain denomination. I'm not going to name it, but they uh, uh, they have been very reticent in disciplining their leadership people for immorality and sexual abuse, mostly. That these guys, well, they said, yeah, they made a mistake, but they're sorry for it, and they're going to go to rehab or counseling, and they've repented, and we'll let them back into the fold as a leader in a congregation. And they've done it time and time and time again. And so I think that this vision here that they're talking about is one that, that scroll is going through there, and it's going to ferret out all of this stuff. And uh, the idea of, the immorality, the lying, when you're lying to your congregation about your your activies and your secret life of in today's world, the big deal is online pornography that seems to be just uh, a terrible curse on men and women today, that they get online and it is just insidious. It grabs a hold of their soul, and it's hard for them to. It's an addiction, and so it really does take its toll on people, and especially then people who act out these things and then become um, uh, pedophiles, or they're child molesters and so forth. So that's kind of what I think they're talking about here. They're just going to ferret out those things, and eventually it's going to be made known. And we as a people in God's kingdom, we can't allow those kind of things to go on. If we have leadership that is immoral, it doesn't matter if they've repented or not. If they've done the crime, then to me they've lost their right to lead God's people. And that may be kind of harsh on my point. Um, but people that would molest children, or I've seen where a pastor will use his position to elicit various sexual favors from members of his congregation, ladies in the congregation, because a lot of times women look up to their pastors and, oh, this is such a great guy. Da, 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 da. I don't know how they talk the women into doing something like that, but those kind of people should never, ever, ever be allowed back in the pulpit and have any kind of leadership role again. And that's just, but I see it way, way, way too often, and it's just a shame. But we have to protect our people, and that's why I pray every week that God would give our families the wisdom and the knowledge that they need to protect their children from some of the stuff that's out there in the world today. And certainly we have to be wary even of leadership within congregations. And you'll note that's why, I am never, ever, ever alone in a room with a woman who is not my wife. And if somebody needs prayer, we can maybe go into a corner of the sanctuary there and pray in private. But I also have women who see that, and I know that they're there, and they know that and they're out there maybe with outside of earshot, but they're watching, and they'll see that I don't touch unless it's just putting the oil on the head and then put my hand on their head. I don't touch. And so we have to be very careful about those kind of things. And I don't know how that got into, it's not in my notes. I'm sorry. We'll get back to something else here. But anyway, the angels speaking with me came forward and said to me, now lift up your eyes and see what is appearing. And so perhaps old Zechariah was still focusing on that flying scroll. I probably ought to just say that flying Megillah. And when the angel commanded, okay, hey, look here. What do you see up in the sky? And so Zechariah then said, well, what is it? And the angel said, this is the measuring basket that goes out. He continued, this is their eye in all the land. All right, now, so this measuring basket that they're talking about here, uh, it's a completely different. It's an ephah, a large barrel. It's a basket that was a common household measure back in those days. Like we would have, like quarts and pints and liters and that sort of thing. Well, that's an ephah was a barrel or a basket, and depending on who you ask and so forth, it could be anywhere from about five. I think they said about 5.8 gallons. It's like 22 liters or something. 5.8 gallons up to about 10 gallons, depending on when in history it was. And so, obviously, even a 10-gallon container would not be big enough for a woman to sit in, even if she was a little bitty woman. So the again, this is a vision. It's like dreams. They don't have to make perfect sense in the sense of that things fit, or it's the right color, or they're speaking the right language, or the idea that we know that a 1971 Olds Cutlass cannot fly, generally speaking, and land on its own without damage. And so we'll just leave that 71 Cutlass story on its own. But dreams don't really have to make a whole lot of sense to us. But here's a woman inside a 5 to 10 gallon container, and so the thing about it is, all throughout Zechariah, when he didn't understand something, he just said, nah, I don't know what it means. I don't know. He didn't try to say, oh yeah, well that's this probably this or that and the other. But no, um it's one of those deals that you know I like old Zechariah. He was had no pretenses. He just if he didn't understand something, he said, "No, I don't understand it." Or if he's looking at something, he says, "What does that mean?" And so the angels, gotten used to Zechariah really being a basket case himself and not knowing uh, a lot of this stuff, even though he's supposed to be an educated priestly kind of guy. But here he was. He's asking these questions, and so um, there's a line in here. It says, "This is their eye in all the land." All right, so if you get down, and there's a lot of you know digging into this stuff with the Greek, going into the Septuagint or into the Hebrew, and they're talking about the eye, but it's in the NIV, they call it the iniquity of the people, and it's the appearance. And so I think the best translation for this is it's an appearance or a resemblance of this. And so it's an idea that it is, and you'll see in a little bit, the iniquity, that's the appearance that's there. And then how do we know that? Well, it's because the next verse says, "Behold, a lead," well, the next two verses, "then behold, a lead cover was lifted, and a woman was sitting in the middle of the measuring basket." Now, a lead covering, very heavy. And lead is not a precious metal. It's something that would not have you wouldn't see it in the temple as far as something that they would use for one of their vessels. But it was very heavy, and it covered up the when they lifted the cover, there's this woman inside there. And so again, we don't know how that fit or whatever, but he's looking at it, and maybe the bucket was a little bit larger and the woman was small, or maybe the scale and so forth. Doesn't really matter. He was just looking at things, and whoever saw a scroll fly to begin with. So there again, it's something that he saw in a vision. So then said the angel exclaimed, this is wickedness." Then he shoved her back inside the measuring basket, throwing the lead weight over the mouth of the basket. So he just opened it up just for a little bit so you could peek in there, and said, "This is wickedness." Bam! Slammed her back down on top of her because did not want to open Pandora's box here and let her out, is what it amounted to. And so you notice here, interesting stuff. Whoops. The evil is often clothed in the form of a woman when they're talking about in the Bible. And why is that? Well, it does not imply that women are inherently more evil than men, because they're not. And the amount of violence and murders in the world today are not committed generally by women. They are. It's just not in their nature. God made women to be, generally speaking, gentle, nurturing people, unless you get between them and their cub. And then all bets are off, and there's not a guy in the world that should get into that position. But anyway, the angel, though, was very careful not to let the woman out. Another reason that they talk about maybe women, I don't know. It could be the idea that you know, Eve in the garden was the one that took the fruit. But my comment on that is that if Adam had been doing his job properly and paying attention and looking out for his wife, that would never have happened. But he wasn't. He was asleep at the switch. And so that's we'll go on because and here's a picture of one of my AI pictures here. Okay. slamming that lid. And of course, the you don't always get what you want here, but this lid is not lead; it's just a wicker lid. But in the Bible, it talks about a lead lid. All right. So, verse 9. After this, I lifted up my eyes, and behold, I saw two women emerging with the wind in their wings, and they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they raised the measuring basket between the earth and the heaven. Now, he looked up and he uh, he saw these two women, and they have the wind in their wings, and they have these wings like a stork. Now you know storks, they're kind of tall, gangly things. You know they got the long legs with a long beak, and they're the ones that carried the baby in the little diaper and in the cartoons. You know which one I'm talking about, and um, massive wings, and they can fly long, long distances with some fairly decent weights. And so angels are normally portrayed as male figures. You know, normally you just don't see any female angels. And so in this particular case, no, he didn't call them angels. He just called them women with stork wings. And so it's kind of interesting that here the woman in the basket is called wickedness, but then God is taking two women again. If they were, and people say, well, they were wicked too. No, if they were wicked, they would have probably let that woman go, pull that lid off and let her go. But no, they picked her up and started to carry her away. So the idea that the women are wicked, no, they're not. That one represented wickedness, but these other two were representing, in if you would, maybe salvation, or at least something that was faithful. And so storks are not they're not a kosher bird in the Bible. You can't eat storks. Okay, so I'm not sure what significance that has, but I just remembered that you're not supposed to eat storks. And so anyway, that's going on, and they carried the evil away. And so here's another picture of possibly these women with stork wings, and which is different than angel wings. Okay, as you can see, these are more like bird wings than the angel wings that you see. All right, so this removal of wickedness, they're taking them away. It's kind of like where, remember back a few weeks ago where we talked about Joshua's filthy garments, and they said, take those garments off of him, and we're putting clean garments on. Well, in this case, the women are taking the wickedness out of Israel. And so finally it says, I asked the angel who was speaking with me, where are they taking the measuring basket? And he said, to build a temple for her in the land of Shinar. When it is prepared, she will live there in her own place. So, as the women fly away, he's asking this question. Well, where are they taking this ephah? And he said, but basically taking them to Shinar. That's an old name for Babylon. And so he's taking them back to Babylon. And the wickedness that had enveloped the Jewish people for so long, he's taking that wickedness and taking it back to Babylon. It's kind of a metaphor for ridding the land of wickedness and cleansing the land. And so bringing this evil wickedness back into Babylon, that's going back to Babylon where it belongs. And so it was a symbolically removing idolatry away from the promised land. Now you remember I've been teaching recently, several weeks, is that when Israel, the Jews, came back from Babylon, they never, ever, ever again had a problem with idolatry. The idolatry's hold, idol worship's hold on Israel was broken in Babylon, and they never, ever went back to it. Now, they had the other problems, but as far as setting up the high places and the Asherah poles and the Ishtar and the Baal and all that kind of stuff, they never, ever, ever went back to that. And so that part of Satan's hold on God's people was broken. And so that ends up the lesson for tonight. Now, are there any comments or questions? And next week we'll jump into the chapter 6 and go through that. That'll be the last two visions that he had, and then we're talking more about the blessings of Israel after that. Any comments or questions anybody might have?
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
you. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. But no questions, huh? Okay, well. Okay, Scott and Lori.
Yeah, we just want to know more about the flying Oldsmobile Cutlass.
That's none of your business.
I'm
They
just
let
saying.
me tell you, they don't fly very well, okay? And
Okay.
it had something to do with going across the New York freeway, New York State freeway up there at the top, going to toward Rochester in the middle of the night at 125 miles an hour.
Sounds like
So
a first
they
class
fly
cadet
low,
problem.
Say again, Alan?
I said, sounds like a first class cadet problem.
Yeah, well, it was a first class cadet problem, and Larry Gans had that goat with that 454 and a four barrel Holly and the uh, a hearse shifter, and he just blew my
Oh,
doors off.
Lord.
Yeah.
I could never keep up with him. And so yeah, it was quite a night. And why neither of us ended up dead that night, I'm not real sure, but we were racing from the academy to his house, and just so yeah, that's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, well, I had a few of my own.
Yep,
That's
yep.
why.
I
That's
think
why.
all of
That's
us
why that
did.
Psalms. That's why that Psalms go. Lord, forgive the sins of my youth.
Yeah, and well, I know that we made it back from Chicago to the academy in the middle of the winter uh, in oh gosh, I don't even know how many hours it was, but it was about half the time that because we were going well over 100 miles an hour everywhere we could to get back, trying to get back before the midnight hour, and we were ended up 4 hours late, and
Oh,
so
turned into
you
pumpkins.
can you can ask Carl Swedberg about that one. So anyway, that's too many secrets there. That's just not right. Okay.
Thanks for the lesson tonight.
But maybe it provided a few chuckles too. So all
It
right.
did.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and shut down the um, well, I got to pause the recording and also stop the share. Stop the share, and then that way I can turn off the other stuff. So, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed